like Howard Zinn and Norman Finkelstein and Noam Chomsky and many other people who actually really do think know better were saying roughly the same sort of thing. And Michael Moore, people like that, Oliver Stone. I mean, I've debated almost all of these people now, not Chomsky, not in person, only in email, saying, well, yes, it's because of our imperial conquests and so forth. As if bin Ladenism was some kind of liberation theology. It's just piffle, all this. I'm not having anything to do with that.
Did you lose friends after 9/11?
Yes, I guess I must have done. Not well, to the extent that one lost them, I'm not sure that they were friends, if you see what I mean. But there were people who wrote and said unkind things about your humble servant, that sort of thing, which seemed to suggest they wouldn't want to see me again if they meant what they'd said. Well, in that case, fine.
Do you have a relationship anymore with Sidney Blumenthal at all?
No, no, that's not somehow possible.
Why not?
Well, we had a very different opinion of what his president, Mr. Clinton, was up to, both as a politician and as a man, especially a man in relation to certain females who I thought were telling the truth and who Sidney thought were not. And Sidney, who has many, many talents, seemed to me to have been hired by the president to prostitute those talents, to essentially to defame and discredit those women. And I just found it too repulsive to put up with anymore, and I took it to the length, which a lot of people thought was too much, of testifying and contradicting Sidney directly when he said that the White House had not tried to smear Monica Lewinsky as a stalker. Yeah, I knew absolutely for sure at first hand that wasn't true, that they had tried to smear her as a stalker. I think now no one denies it, but because of the circumstances of the impeachment trial where I said I would if called to testify to that, it meant that Sidney and I had something of a breach.
How did that incident change your life or your relationships in Washington?
Well, in two ways. One, I think that even if one is, or can be argued to be, in the right or trying to tell the truth, or indeed telling it, a lot of people I can quite see will often think, well, someone is still acting in some way as an informer. So that's the unpleasant insinuation. And on the left, this is a very, very strong tradition. It's sort of almost like a law of omerta. Anyone who testifies to a hearing is sort of a fink, as a stool pigeon. That's culture. So I have sidelong looks about that. And of course, there are many, many people who still think that it was thing to do with the performance of the president's responsibilities or with his performance as a politician, that he had this squalid side to him and always had. But that's a different disagreement.
Next call for Christopher Hitchens on In Depth, Rio Vista, California.
Hi, Mr. Hitchens. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you.
I think you're a person of rare honor and integrity in the intellectual community, and as a religious person myself, I feel like your work helps me to hold myself to a higher standard. And I wondered if you're familiar with the work of Joseph Campbell and Ken Wilber, whose views, I think, basically say that the problem with religion is the mythic level of religion, which you so effectively criticize. And Campbell uses James Joyce, who I notice is one of your favorite writers, to bolster that opinion. So I wondered if you could comment about that, and thank you very much for your work.
First, thank you for being so generous, and second, you catch me really forced to admit that I'm very underread on Joseph Campbell, and it's an omission I have thought of more than once of repairing. I know that he was something of a supporter of the psychological views of Carl Gustav Jung, of which I'm slightly suspicious, I must say. But I know also that he's written what seems quite provocative and interesting stuff about the role of myth and legend in forming religious orthodoxy. And I owe it to myself probably to be better informed the next time I get asked about this.
Next call, Sarasota, Florida.
Yeah, Can you all hear me? I'm calling on a...
We're going to move on to Twin Falls, Idaho. Idaho,
Yes.
you're on the air.
Yes, yes. We're openers, Mr. Hitchens. It's a great pleasure to speak to you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm hoping that I could at least have an intelligent question for you. Just from my own opinion, from what I am seeing of you, it sounds like you are somewhat of a dichotomy, and that makes me, that's not bad, but it does make you very good. I am wondering what relation or where do you put the Mr. William F. Buckley and his intellectual approach and his ideologies?
Well,
yes.
Mr. Buckley was incredibly good to me when he was running Firing Line, his flagship TV show. And would have me on quite often. And I remember thinking with Firing Line, unlike a lot of debate shows on TV, if you left that studio thinking, damn, I wish I'd made that point or made that point that way, it was your fault. You'd had every chance to do it. No one was trying to hurry you up or shut you down or cut you off. It was very impressive, and I'm grateful to him for that style, and indeed the style in which, for the most part, he ran National Review. But I can't conceal the fact that, I mean, especially under his editorship, the National Review was the worldview of the Catholic right wing. I mean, not excluding General Franco and Joseph McCarthy, and I couldn't be further away from any interpretation of that kind. I don't much go for spy thriller novels either, but one or two of his Blackford Oaks books amused me too. Sorry, just wanted to add that.
Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Yes, Mr. Hitchens, I'd like to ask you what you think of, well, in this country, I guess in particular, but you're experienced all throughout the world in religious fundamentalism, fanaticism, or whatever, but what do you think is the level of hypocrisy between those who espouse religion and fundamentalism or whatever, and what you think they really do believe is such and feel it within their spirit? And I just wondered if you could comment on that in this country and perhaps throughout the world even.
Yes, that's a very interesting question, and one has to ask it all the time, and it's been lent some point recently by the revelation of Mother Teresa's loss of it may not be correct to say exactly total loss of faith, but great loss of conviction, of certainty in her faith. With someone like, say, Billy Graham, I think one can see all the symptoms of a self-conscious fraud. I mean, someone who doesn't believe any of this at all, but is a reasonably good businessman. I have a reason for thinking that, apart from the terrible appearance that he gives in public, the appallingly phony appearance, I mean to say, there was a Canadian Billy Graham, a contemporary of his, who north of the border was that crusade embodied, called James Templeton, who wrote a memoir about the point when he himself realized that what he was talking was complete nonsense, and no sensible person could believe it. And he went to Billy Graham and said, well, look, here's what's happened to me. Can you really go on saying this stuff? And Graham basically says, it's too late to stop now. And lots of people expect it of me, and we're in business. And that's what I think is the case with a surprisingly large amount of it. But I'm not, I don't want to sound vulgar about it. I mean, I know a lot of people to whom religion means everything, or